Hey everybody, and welcome back to Ready Steady Play, where today we're going to talk about the Black Rose War. The Black Rose War is a once-in-a-decade ritual where mages gather from all across the land to do battle in the purpose-built arena, the Black Rose Lodge. Here, they will be judged by the Black Rose entity, who is the most powerful combatant, the greatest wielder of magic, and this mage will be granted the title of Grand Master, and they will become Grand Master of all the schools of magic. That is until the next Black Rose War. And so the ritual became tradition for all the schools of magic, and so it continued until one day, mages from the School of Destruction, seeking ever more power, delved into magics that they should not have, and accidentally opened a gateway between the ninth gate of Hell and the Black Rose Lodge. The fallen angel Lucifer, seeing an opportunity, came into the lodge, hoping to harness the power of the Black Rose entity and use this power to conquer heaven itself. Only through an alliance of the mages were they able to beat Lucifer back into hell and close the gateway. Unfortunately, in the epic battle that ensued, the Black Rose Lodge was completely destroyed and the entity was lost. A generation later, the magical orders, the ritual, the Grand Master are all but faded memories. But the Black Rose entity survived, and it stirs, calling to the mages once more to return to the ruins of the Black Rose Lodge, to engage in the ritual and to do battle, and through battle, to rebuild in Black Rose Wars Rebirth. Black Rose Wars Rebirth is a new standalone Black Rose Wars game set in the world of Nova Teus. Although it can be played on its own, it's also completely integratable with the original game. In this video, we're going to go through this core box, we're going to take a look at what's inside, and we're going to learn how to play the game. As usual, you can find all of the links to the video's sections in the description down below if you want to find something specific. I'd like to point out that before we dive in, all of these components are not yet final. This is a prototype, and I'd like to thank Ludus Magnus Studios for sponsoring this video. Alright, let's take a look at what's inside. So because this is a prototype, I don't have a printed rulebook, but normally you'd have one in your game. So you can see all of the miniatures here are laid out in a top tray. Then you've got a middle tray here which contains little player trays as well that you can take out and give to people. And you've got other game components here as well as room for a fifth and a sixth player. And then in the bottom box here you've got all of the rooms and the player sheets and everything like that. So let's take a look first at the main game components. So we've got 19 new rooms, which includes a Black Rose room, as well as the throne room as well. We've got 4 mage cells, one for each player color. We've got 1 power board here for tracking victory points. We've got an event board here for tracking event cards. We've got a crown token, which is a first player marker. Black Rose power token, which is a victory point marker. We've got 19 activation tokens here, which are put onto the rooms when they're rebuilt. You can see that each room has a destroyed side and a rebuilt side as well. We've got here 40 quest cards, which are divided into 3 different decks. First Moon, Second Moon, and Third Moon. We've got 26 event cards, which are also divided into 3 moon phases, First Moon, Second Moon, and Third Moon. We've got a Second Moon token here, as well as a Third Moon token, and 1 Black Rose token there as well. We've got 26 damage/instability tokens, which are used for the Black Rose. And those are the components that are going to be used to put together the main game board. But we've also got 6 schools of magic in this core set. which can be combined with any of the existing first campaign schools of magic or any additional schools of magic released during the Black Rose Rebirth campaign. So in this core set, you've got 226 magical spells. These are divided into 7 different categories, 6 schools of magic, as well as the Forgotten School. This is the Hex School right here. We've got Technomancy, which is all about upgrading undead minions. This is Agony, where you take damage from the Black Rose in order to do more and more powerful spells. Shamanic Magic, which is all about summoning totems to do more powerful spells. We've got Alchemy, which increases the power of the spells based on the spells you've already cast this round. And Nightmare, the final school of magic, which is all about assigning horrifying, tormenting nightmares to the other mages. We've also got 9 new Forgotten spells. These are the most powerful spells in the Black Rose Lodge, and of course, devastating to your opponents. We've got 7 reference cards, 1 for the Forgotten spells and 1 for each of the other schools. Each reference card will show the different elemental powers in the school, as well as 2 potential starting decks if you want to start with this school of magic. We've got 22 Evocation cards here that represent the different evocations you can summon from the different schools of magic. The totems here for Shamanic. The cadavers here can be summoned through Technomancy or using rooms in the Lodge. You've got Succubi here who come from the school of Agony, and Colossi as well. They also come from Technomancy and you can summon them through the Lodge. The Negredos come from Alchemy. And finally the Albedo, who comes from a Forgotten spell. It's very, very powerful. You've also got these 9 Nightmare Umbra cards, which represent these nightmares summoned by the School of Nightmares. They're evocation cards, although they're a little different to evocations. We've got 1 Albedo token to represent the Albedo because there's no miniature. We've got 18 upgrade cards here that represent all the different upgrades you can use to enhance your undead minions using the School of Technomancy. We've got 12 Jinx cards, which represent the jinxes you can put on your opponents through the School of Hex Magic. And all of these are debuffs that you can put on your opponent, which are pretty awful. So if you're playing with just this core set, you'll use those 6 schools of magic to play with, but of course there are many more options if you have any of the additional content. Once you've set out your 6 schools of magic and your Forgotten spells and all the appropriate evocations and other cards, it's time for each player to pick a color and get their player components together. We have 4 player sheets here, 1 in each player color. So this is white, blue, red, and purple. There's 4 mages in this core set: Ariana, Ricart, Baron Doria, and Gramigna. Here we have 12 custom spells. There's 3 for each mage. Each of the spells is the same. We have 6 of these little player trays, but I've only got the components for 4 players in this prototype, so I've got 2 empty trays. Each tray holds the pieces each player will need for their color. So we should have in here 1 victory point token with a plus 35 points side, 2 physical action tokens. We've got 4 trap tokens, which are double-sided with a protection side as well. 4 persistence tokens, 1 for your quick spell, and then the others numbered 1 to 3 for the appropriate slots on your mage sheet. We've got 7 trophy tokens for if you're killed. So we've got 5 bases here, 1 for your mage, which is just in your player color. And then the other 4 for evocations. You've got the small bases with 1 flower, 2 flowers, and 3 flowers. And then you've got 1 large base in your player color as well. Finally, you've got 26 damage instability cubes in your player color. So you have those player pieces in 4 colors, 5 and 6, if you've got the 5 and 6 player expansion. So let's take a look at the miniatures. So we have our 4 mages. This is Ricard. This is Ariane, the Technomancer. Grimigna, the Witch. And Baron Doria. We've got these 8 cadavers, tiny little undead creatures that'll do your bidding. Three succubi from the School of Agony. 3 negrettos from the School of Alchemy. 3 undead colossi, giant evocations that do a ton of damage. We have 9 umbras coming to stab you from the realm of nightmares. And 5 totems to help you realize your shamanic dreams. Hey, so that's everything in the prototype box. It should pretty accurately represent what you're getting in the final copy of the game as well, of course with a rulebook included. But if you want to know how to play the game, stick around. We're going to start by setting up the Black Rose Lodge. So it's time to start setting up the game, and we're going to start by setting up the Black Rose Lodge. So when we start setting up the Black Rose Lodge, we want to make sure that we have all of our rooms for the Black Rose Lodge sorted out. We've got our regular rooms here, we've got our Black Rose room and our throne room here, and we've got our 4 wizard cells here. And we'll set up all 4 no matter how many players we're going to play with. Let's start by taking the Black Rose room and placing it in the middle of the table. Then we're going to take the throne room and attach it to one of the edges of the Black Rose room. The edge that we put it next to doesn't matter. Now it's important when you're setting out these rooms that you set them out with the destroyed sides up, which means you can see these spaces present at the bottom. As we can see on the other side, those spaces are no longer present. Now that we've got the Black Rose room and the throne room set up, we're going to take our remaining rooms, shuffle them up to create a randomized order without looking, and then we're going to place them out in descending columns, starting with the middle column. So it's going to go 5, and then 4, and then 3. Now that we've got our rooms and our lodge laid out, we're going to take the 4 wizard cells, and we're going to give these a shuffle face down so that nobody can see which is which. And then you're going to place these in the 4 corners of the board. Finally, we take our event board and our power board, and we attach these to either side of the game board like this. So now that our lodge is assembled, we can get out the rest of the game components for these 2 boards here. So we're going to take our deck of quest cards here, and we're going to separate the first moon cards. We're going to give these a really good shuffle. Once they're shuffled, place them here on the quest card spot on the power board. Take the second moon and third moon decks and set them to one side. Make sure they're shuffled as well. You'll need them later. Take the deck of Evocation cards and Umber cards and place them on this position here on the power board. You don't need to worry about shuffling this deck. Take the upgrade cards and give those a shuffle, and then place them in this spot here on the power board. And take the Jinx cards and give those a shuffle too. Place them in the final position here on the power board. You can see here on the power board a star above the 6, the 18, and the 30 positions. Place your second moon token up here above the 6, your third moon token here above the 18, and your black rose token here above the 30. Note that you can adjust these values once you become more experienced with the game. These are just the recommended starting positions. The last thing to do on the power board at this stage is to put the black rose power token here on the 0 space of the power track. Now we move over here to the event board where we've got 2 spaces here. Don't worry about this one, it's not used during setup. This space here is going to hold the damage and instability cubes for the black rose. Now we're going to take our event cards, just like we did with the quest cards, and separate them into the 3 decks. You can set aside the second moon and third moon decks for the time being. You'll need those later on. You can shuffle the first moon deck and place it into the event deck spot on the event board. Now that we've got the main game components laid out, let's set up our mage player areas. It's worth noting that up until this point, game setup is the same no matter how many players you're playing with. I'm only going to set up one mage area, but of course you would repeat this process for each player in your game no matter how many players you are. The number of mage areas you set up is the only difference in setup for player count. The last person who donated or received a rose in real life receives the crown token and becomes the first player. And then starting with the player with the crown token, each player chooses a color and a mage. So this player has received their Baron Doria mage card, miniature, the mage sheet in their player color red, 3 custom spells for their mage, as well as all the player pieces in their player color. In your player tray you should find 28 damage and instability tokens, 5 bases, including 1 for your mage, which you can set now. You've got 1 power token, 4 trap/protection tokens, which are double-sided, 2 physical action tokens with their used side, 7 trophy tokens, and 4 persistence tokens, matching each spot on your mage sheet. Take your mage card here, and note that it's double-sided. This is the side for Black Rose Wars Rebirth, and this is the side for Black Rose Wars Original Game. So take the Rebirth side and put it here on your mage sheet, and then you can take your 2 physical action tokens and put them into the spots here on your mage card. Each player will take their power token and put it on the 0 space here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to set up our schools of magic. Each player is going to build their starting deck, and it's worth noting that the decks are printed on the back of these reference cards, which you're also going to use for laying out the schools of magic. It's worth noting that once everyone's got their Grimoire, their starting deck, set up, then you will shuffle the schools of magic and place them on these reference cards. You're also going to need space for a discard pile, so make sure you've left space on your table for that. So starting with the first player, each player will pick a school of magic to build their starting grimoire, their starting deck, from. It's important to note that you can't pick the same deck as someone else once they've chosen that deck. It's also worth noting that each mage has 3 custom spells, which naturally synchronize with one of the schools of magic. Now, it's not necessary to choose this school as your starting school, but it's useful to know that if you do, there'll be some natural synchronicity there. Baron Doria's custom spell is from the Nightmare School of Magic, so our first player here will pick the Nightmare School for their starting grimoire. You take the Nightmare reference card here and check out the 2 starting decks listed here on the back. We've got one called Scarecrow and one called Incubus. Each deck lists 6 cards that are available in the Nightmare School of Magic. The player will choose one of these sets, collect the 6 cards from the deck, and set those aside as their starting grimoire. Our first player here will pick the Scarecrow deck. Each school of magic has special rules associated with it that change up the way this deck will play. Each school of magic has some special rules associated with it. These significantly change the way the deck plays and how the magic works in the game. Make sure you check these out before picking a deck so that you'll pick a school of magic that appeals to your playstyle. The last thing for our player to do here is to take their 6-card starting grimoire and add one of their custom spells to it. The other 2 remaining custom spells should be set aside for use later in the game. Now that we've got our 7 cards here, our 1 custom spell, plus our 6 starting cards, we're going to shuffle this together and put it down next to our player board to be our starting deck of cards. Once every mage has their starting deck, their grimoire, set up, then it's time to reveal the cells and see where each player is going to start. Each player takes their mage miniature and puts it in the appropriate cell. Any cells for mages that are not included in the game, if you're playing with less than 4, are removed. In this case, let's say I'm not playing with a purple player. Here's the purple cell. We'll remove this from the game. We're almost ready to play, and one of the last things we're going to do is set up the schools of magic in a library. Place the 6 schools of magic reference cards out face down. Make sure you've familiarized yourself with the special rules because they're about to be covered up. Shuffle each of the decks of cards and place them on the appropriate reference card. You should also shuffle the forgotten spells and place them on their reference card, but make sure that they're set apart from the other library so you don't get them confused. These ones are acquired a special way. The last thing to do is to take the Evocation miniatures and put these within reach of all of the players. And now we're all set up and ready to play, so let's learn how to play Black Rose Wars. Black Rose Wars is a trial of magical power. Mages will use their magical skills to battle each other in a free-for-all skirmish to determine who will be the next Grand Master. This will be determined by the Black Rose entity, Black Rose Wars is a trial of magical power. Mages will use their skills to battle each other in a free-for-all skirmish for the appraisal of the Black Rose entity, a magical being whose judgment will determine the next Grand Master of the schools of magic. The aim of the game is to score the most power points in order to become the new Grand Master. Mages will begin in their cell on the outside of the lodge. They will move into the lodge, cast spells by playing spell cards from their grimoire, which is their deck, and activate the powers of the rooms in order to defeat one another and score power points. When a mage is defeated, they will immediately respawn in their cell and rejoin the battle. The game ends when someone, either a mage, player, or the Black Rose entity, reaches an agreed-upon threshold of power points. The standard number is 30. When this is collected, the end of the game is triggered. Most of the power points you will receive, you'll get during the game by casting spells, completing quests, and rebuilding the lodge. There are other ways to get points too. But be careful, the Black Rose entity can also earn points through the game's mechanisms, usually through event cards played, but also through defeating players and taking part in the game's mechanisms. And if you're not careful, the Black Rose will get so far ahead, it will end the game and win. And you'll all lose, and no one will get to be Grand Master. The game is carried out in rounds, and each round has 6 phases. The Black Rose phase, the study phase, the preparations phase, the action phase, the evocation phase, and finally, the cleanup phase. In the Black Rose phase, we're going to reveal and play an event card from the deck here. Additionally, any players who don't have an unsolved quest card or don't like their quest cards can get a new one. In the study phase, players will draw some cards from their grimoire to add to their hand, as well as select new cards from the library to add to their hand. This phase is played simultaneously. In the preparations phase, players are going to pick cards from their hand to play face down on their player board. This phase is also simultaneous. These are the spells they're going to be casting in the actions phase. This phase is also played simultaneously. In the actions phase, players will take turns going in clockwise order from the player with the crown token, taking actions to move around the lodge and cast spells and fight. This phase continues until no player has any available actions left to take. In the Evocation phase, any Evocations that have been summoned will activate, moving and attacking enemy mages. In the cleanup phase, the first thing we're going to do is check to see if anyone's won the game. Then, if nobody's won, we'll award some points for rebuilding rooms in the Black Rose Lodge and rebuild those rooms. We'll clean up our mage sheets. We'll check again to see if anyone's won, because they might have got some points for rebuilding. If nobody's won the game, then we'll crack on with another round. Now we have a basic understanding of how a round is laid out. What we're going to do is we're going to look at some core game concepts. These concepts can be triggered in many different and surprising ways, so it's important that we understand them. Once we've developed that understanding, then we can go back and look at how the different phases of a round play out in more detail. So let's start by looking at how the game ends and power points. You, your fellow mages, and the Black Rose entity can all earn power points. Power points will determine when the game ends, as well as who's won the game when it does end. You can earn power points for damaging other mages, contributing instability to rooms that are rebuilt in the lodge, completing quests, casting spells, and rarely event cards. Actually, really just during the third moon deck. Whenever you see this white rose symbol here, that means you'll gain that many power points. When you see this black rose symbol here, that means the Black Rose entity will gain that many power points. When you gain power points, you move up the PowerPoint track here. And of course, the Black Rose can do so as well. When someone reaches 30 or more power points, the end of the game is triggered, and the game will end during the cleanup phase of this round, and final scoring will be calculated. At the end of the game, points will be awarded for whoever has completed the most quests. The Black Rose can't earn any points for this. Whoever has the most trophies are awarded when a mage is defeated during the game, and the Black Rose can earn points for this, and a point to whoever has the crown token as well. The mage who has completed the most quests gains 6 points. Second place gets 3 points, and you get 1 point for participating if you've completed at least one quest. The mage with the most trophies gains 4 points. Second place gets 2 points, and again you get 1 point for participating, and then 1 point if you had the crown. Any trophies earned by the Black Rose are kept here and accounted for during final scoring. If after all points have been awarded and the Black Rose has the most, then it's won the game, and nobody else wins, and there's no new Grandmaster because everyone failed and you'll have to do it again. And the endgame scoring is also the hierarchy for tie breaks on endgame scoring. So if the final power points are tied, first whoever won the most quests breaks the tie, then whoever had most trophies if there's still a tie on quests, then whoever has the crown chooses the winner. Speaking of ties, it's worth noting that if there's ever a tie in the game on a criteria for earning power points, that is to say if the award for something is power points and there's ever a tie, then the tie is calculated by giving each player who is tied the full value they are entitled to minus 1. So if 2 players are tied for something that gives you 4 points, they'll both receive 3. Note that this does not apply for points that are awarded for participation. Usually this is the final bracket, so anywhere where you're in the last place for something, then you're always awarded 1 point for participating, and nobody gets minus 1 for tying on that. Everyone gets 1 point. So now we understand how to end the game and win the game. Let's look at the 3 moons. The game is played in 3 moon phases, which affect the quest deck and the event deck. Immediately, when any mage or the Black Rose entity reaches 6 power points, the second moon phase is triggered. Replace the quest deck and the event deck with the second moon version of the deck. The third moon phase is triggered immediately when a mage or the Black Rose entity reaches 18 power points. This phase lasts for the rest of the game. Again, the event deck and quest deck are replaced with the third moon version of the deck this time. Now that we understand about the moons, let's talk about mages. Each mage is different, and you'll find the differences on your mage card and on your custom spells. Your mage card has two sides. This one, which is used for this version of the game, Black Rose Wars Rebirth, and this one, which is used for the original Black Rose Wars game. The mage card also tells you your statistics. The heart symbol at the top here is your health. This is the amount of damage you can take before you're killed. This hand symbol here is the maximum number of cards you can keep in your hand at the end of the study phase. The fist symbol is your strength. It's the amount of damage you can deal with physical attacks. And the mage walking symbol is your speed. It tells you how many rooms you can move through when you take the exploration action. You can see here on Grimigna that she has slightly more hit points and a slightly smaller hand size. It's also worth noting that they'll indicate which slot on the health track here is their maximum hit points with this little arrow. Each mage has 3 custom spells, and you start the game with 1 in your grimoire. The other 2 are set aside. The first of the 2 set-aside cards is added to your hand when the second moon phase is triggered, and the third card is added to your hand when the third moon phase is triggered. Keep in mind that when a custom spell is unlocked by triggering a moon phase, they're added to your hand, not your grimoire or your memories. So now that we understand our mages a little better, let's talk about evocations. Evocations are things created by magic. They might be undead, demons, talismans, magical altars, or even nightmares. They're most commonly brought into the game by 2 methods. Either a spell effect that summons them, or a room effect, which also summons them. Most evocations are simply monsters, designed to hurt other mages. But some of them are very unique and have special effects, so make sure you familiarize yourself with the spell schools through their reference cards as well as spell cards so you understand how they all work. When summoning an evocation, the manner in which you summon it will tell you how and where it is created. When this happens, you take the evocation card from the evocation deck and place it in a free slot under your mage sheet. Then take the appropriate base. The small bases have 3 roses to differentiate the evocations. Each mage only has 1 large base, so they may only control 1 large evocation. Because we've placed the card in slot 1, we take the slot 1 base and we place the miniature in it. The cadaver is then placed in the cemetery with Barandoria because the summon happens at range 0. More on range later when we cover casting spells. There is 1 copy of each evocation card for each model. If a mage summons an evocation, but there are none of the correct type left, then the summon has failed and the evocation cannot be placed. If a mage summons an evocation but already controls 3, they must remove 1 of their evocations to make room for the new one, or the summon fails. Each evocation has 3 statistics on their evocation cards. These are speed, the distance it can move, strength, how much physical damage it does with an attack, and health, how much damage they can take before they are killed. The evocation may have a special effect up here, and this will tell you what it is, a bit of flavor text down here, and also its name and type over here as well. The type's only important if something references it, as well as the image, which will tell you which model to find when the evocation is summoned. An evocation is under a mage's control if it has been placed in that mage's colored base. Evocations can be activated through commands from the controlling mage, through spells, through quest rewards, and other effects as well. Some spells even allow you to activate evocations that are controlled by other mages. When an evocation activates, it moves up to its movement value and then attacks a mage for damage equal to its strength value. So in this example, Barandoria activates his cadaver, which moves 2 rooms and attacks Ariana for 1 damage. Speaking of damage and evocations, let's talk about damage and defeat. Mages can deal damage to each other and opposing evocations using physical attacks, casting spells, using evocations, or room effects. Or perhaps even by some other methods. Each mage has 26 cubes, which are used to mark their damage, damage dealt by their evocations, and any instability they might cause to the lodge. When the mage deals any damage or instability, put the appropriate number of cubes onto the opponent's mage sheet if it's damage dealt to an opposing mage. Damage dealt to evocations is placed on the evocation card, and into a room if it's instability. Note that instability is not the same as damage even though it uses the same game component, and we'll talk about instability in the next section. When an effect deals damage, you'll see this black heart symbol here. If the target of the damage has their health met or exceeded by the damage they are dealt, they are defeated. A target cannot take more damage than its total health value. Any excess damage is not applied. Damage dealt to mages is stored along the top of their mage sheet. If Ariana, who's playing white in this game, casts Black Torture on Baron Doria, then 3 damage cubes are placed along the top of his mage sheet in her color. If the target of the damage has their health met or exceeded by the damage they are dealt, they are defeated. A target cannot take more damage than its total health value, so any excess damage is not applied. When a mage is defeated, anyone who contributed damage is awarded points. 4 points to the mage who contributed the most damage, 2 points for second place, and 1 point for participation, regardless of the number of participants or ties. As I mentioned earlier, in the event of a tie, the tied players receive the full amount minus 1 power point. So in this example here, Baron Doria has been defeated, and Grimigna, the blue player, will receive 4 points. The Black Rose and Ariana, the white player, are tied for second place, which means they'll both receive 1 point. 2 points minus 1. So that's 4 points for Grimigna and 1 point for Ariana and the Black Rose. Additionally, whoever dealt the final blow, applied the last damage cube, earns a trophy from the mage who was defeated. If the mage was defeated by another mage, place the trophy here on that mage's mage sheet. If the final blow was dealt by the Black Rose, the trophy goes to the Black Rose instead. Any trophies earned by the Black Rose are placed here on the event board. In the event that all the damage dealt to a defeated mage was dealt by one other mage, that mage receives 5 points instead of 4, as well as the trophy. After points are awarded and trophies have been given out, return the damage cubes to their owner, and then the defeated mage returns to their mage cell, which is the one that matches their color. There are 3 important things to remember when a mage is in their mage cell. A mage in their cell cannot be the target of any effects, whether these are spell effects, event effects, quest effects, or anything else. A mage cannot voluntarily stay in their cell. They must exit at the first opportunity using either an exploration action or a momentum action. They cannot use any other actions while they're in their cell. We'll cover these actions later on, but that's very important to remember. A mage can never voluntarily enter a cell. This also means they'll never be in an opponent's cell. This means being defeated and returning to your cell can really disrupt a mage's plans for the round if they now have to repurpose their actions in order to leave their cell. Of course, if a mage is defeated and has no actions available in this actions phase, then they'll have to leave at the first opportunity in the next action phase. And so that's about it for defeat. Let's talk about instability and rebuilding the lodge. The Black Rose Lodge has been destroyed and fallen into disrepair. The raw magic generated by the mage's spells can be absorbed by the Black Rose entity and used to rebuild the rooms in the lodge. Instability is generated whenever you see this black symbol here. When instability is placed, it's placed in these spaces here in the color of the player or the Black Rose entity who created it. When the spaces are filled, the room will be rebuilt during the cleanup phase, and points will be awarded to anyone who has contributed. The most common way to generate instability is when you see this symbol in the middle of a card. This places instability in the room where the casting mage is located. Instability can be placed in many ways, including casting spells, a room effect, the special effect of an evocation, by completing quests, or by an event. We can see here a spell effect that places instability in addition to the card. We can see here a room effect that places an instability. The Negredo Evocation has a special effect here that places instability. Here we see an event that places instability for the Black Rose. And here we see a quest reward that allows you to place instability as well. During the cleanup phase of a round, any room that's been completely filled with instability will be rebuilt. Here on the observatory, we can see 3 points values, which will be awarded for first, second, and third place when the room is rebuilt. There is no participation award for when a room is rebuilt. So in this example, the red player has first place, the Black Rose has second place, and third place, which in this case is actually worth 0, is not awarded. The Black Rose is able to earn power points for this, so once both power points awards have been given out, the cubes will be returned to their respective owners and the tile will be flipped over. You'll notice the room now has no space for instability because it's been rebuilt. We must find the room's activation tile and put it here on the room. Note that when a rebuilt room's ability is used for the first time each round, flip the activation tile over to show that the ability cannot be used again this round. Note that you cannot place instability in a room that's already filled with instability. You can, however, convert it. More on that when we talk about casting a spell. Now that we know about how to rebuild the lodge, let's talk about another game concept: quests. Quests can be gained in 2 main ways. Either by not having an unsolved quest during the Black Rose phase, or room actions. There may be other ways. When you gain a quest, you should draw it from the current quest deck and look at it in secret. Then place it face down on your Mage sheet. Some quests are revealed immediately. Some quests are revealed when you complete part of it, and some quests are only revealed when you completed the entire quest. You complete a quest when you completed all of the criteria on the card. First, you can resolve the quest reward at the bottom, and then you place it in your completed quests area. When you complete a quest, you receive the reward shown here, as well as the power points shown down here. And then move the quest to your completed quest area. A mage can only have 2 unsolved quests at any given time. If they would gain a third unsolved quest, they must choose one to discard to the Black Rose event board. When they discard a quest to the Black Rose event board, the Black Rose will gain power points based on the moon phase of the discarded quest card. In this instance, 1 power point. 2 points for the Black Rose if it's a second moon phase quest card being discarded, and 3 points for the Black Rose if it's a third moon phase quest card being discarded. So the Black Rose always receives 1, 2, or 3 points when a quest card is discarded based on the moon phase of that quest card. And now that we understand these core game concepts, let's talk about how to play around, starting with the Black Rose phase. So in this next section of the rules video, we're going to go through a round of the game, starting with the first round, the Black Rose phase. The first phase in a round is the Black Rose phase. And the Black Rose phase is divided into 3 steps: drawing an event card, discarding unsolved quest cards, drawing a new quest card. First, the player to the right of the player with the crown will draw an event card. This is important because if the black crown symbol appears, then the player who drew the event card immediately takes the crown from the player who currently has it. Then we resolve the effect on the card. This might be an immediate effect or it might be an ongoing effect. In this case, the Black Rose entity would immediately place 1 instability in each green and gray room. As you can see, there are 7 different colors of room on the board: blue, red, green, yellow, purple, black, and gray. These can be referenced by both event cards and quest cards. After resolving the effect, if there is one, we'll then award the Black Rose entity the points shown here on the card. This means when the event card is drawn, give the Black Rose this many points. In this case, 2. Then we place the card in this position on the event board. As this is the first card, we can place it down freely. However, if there was already a card in that position, then we would displace any existing cards to the right. If a card would be displaced into the discard, make sure to check the discard position on the card that's being discarded and if there are any points there for the Black Rose to award them. In this case, the card does not award the Black Rose any power points. If the card does not show a position here, then immediately discard it. So in this case, the Black Rose would gain 2 points and then no points, and the card would be discarded. Then each mage with an unsolved quest may discard it if they want. And the Black Rose will gain points based on the moon phase of the card that was discarded. 1 for first moon, 2 for second moon, and 3 for third moon cards. So in this case, the Black Rose would gain 1 point. Of course, in the first round of the game, the players will not have any quest cards to discard. The third step of the Black Rose phase is that every player who does not have an unsolved quest card may draw one. Simply draw the unsolved quest card from the appropriate deck, check it, as described in the earlier section. If it's to be revealed, reveal it. If not, keep it secret. Once every player has resolved drawing a quest card if they get to, then it's time to move on to the next phase, the study phase. The second phase of a round is the study phase. In this phase, players will draw 2 cards from their grimoire and add cards to their hand from the library as well. This phase is played simultaneously, so everyone can do it in any order that they want at the same time. It's always helpful to remember at the beginning of a phase to check the Black Rose event board just in case there's something that triggers during that phase. It's useful to remember that your draw deck is called your grimoire, the cards in your hand are referred to as your hand, and the cards in your discard pile are referred to as your memories. This phase has 4 steps. Step 1, each player draws 2 cards from their grimoire to add to their hand. If you ever go to draw cards from your grimoire and you don't have any, then you must shuffle your discard pile called your memories to make a new grimoire. It's useful to look at the cards you just drew so that you know what's in your hand, because the next step will require you to make a decision. Step 2, each player is going to draw 4 cards from the available library of cards. Those are the 6 decks belonging to the 6 schools of magic. It's important to note that you draw the cards face down and that you must draw all 4 cards before you look at any of them. You may take all 4 cards from the same school of magic or from different schools of magic in any combination. So 4 cards from 4 different decks, 4 cards from the same deck, 3 from one deck, 1 from another, or 2 and 2. It's up to you. As you draw the 4 cards, do not add these cards to your hand. Step 3 is look at the 4 cards you've just taken from the library, add 2 to your hand, and discard the other 2 face up to the appropriate discard piles for their schools of magic. Step 4 is simply check your hand, and if you have more than your maximum allowance, remember Baron Doria is allowed 8 cards, then you must discard any excess to your memories. Fortunately, after the first study phase, you should have 4 cards in your hand, so you're okay. A mage may once, at any point during the entire study phase, return 1 card from their hand to the discard pile for the appropriate school. Or, if it's one of your custom spells, set it aside with any that are currently set aside. This is a useful way to get some cards out of your grimoire that might not fit in with your current strategy. It might also be helpful to know that each deck in the library contains 3 copies of 12 different spells for 36 cards. Of course, some cards will already be missing for the starting grimoires. Before we move on, remember that the forgotten spells are not in the library. You cannot take these spells during the study phase. The only way to get these spells is using the Black Rose room action. It's time to move on to the third phase of the round. The third phase of a round is the preparation phase. This phase is also played simultaneously. In the next phase, the action phase, mages are going to be running around the lodge and casting spells. And in this phase, we're going to prepare the spells that we're going to cast. We're going to do this by taking spell cards from our hand and placing them face down into the slots on our mage sheet. This slot in the top row with the lightning bolt card is called the quick slot. Along the bottom row, we've got 3 slots numbered 1, 2, and 3. Each spell card has 2 different effects, one on the top and one on the bottom. When you prepare the spell, you have to choose which of these 2 effects you want to play. Spells must be flipped vertically from the bottom up, so make sure that the effect you want is displayed in the top position once the card is flipped. This can take a little getting used to. There are arrows here on the back of the card and here on the other side in order to help you. There are 4 slots available on your mage board, and during this phase you must prepare at least 2 cards. You probably want to prepare all 4 slots. That's it for the preparation phase. However, as you can imagine, this is very, very important. You'll want to think very carefully about what you want to do and the order in which you want to do these things. You'll also have to try to predict what you think your opponents are going to do and prepare accordingly. There are restrictions about the way in which the cards you've just planned can be revealed and played in the actions phase, which we're going to learn about right now. Phase 4 of a round is the aptly named action phase, where all the action's going to take place. So we're reminded once again to check the Black Rose event board for anything that triggers at the beginning of the phase. Once you're done checking the event board for any events that might trigger, play commences in turn order, going clockwise, starting with the player with the crown token. On a mage's turn, they must take 1 action, and they may take 2 actions. There are 5 actions a mage might take on their turn. 3 physical actions and 2 other actions. The 3 physical actions are Explore, Physical Attack, and Command. And the 2 other actions are Cast a Spell and Momentum. Casting a spell and Momentum both involve card play. Let's look at the 3 physical actions first. There is a reminder of the 3 physical actions here on the Physical Action Activation token. Up here you've got the symbol for Speed, which represents the Explore action because it uses the speed statistic. Down here you've got the Strength symbol, which is a reminder for the Physical Attack action, which uses the Strength statistic. And over here you've got a symbol which represents Evocations, and that's because the Command action involves Evocations. Up here, you've got a symbol for activating rooms, just to remind you that some of these actions will activate a room. In order to take a physical action, a mage flips over one of their physical action tokens to the used side. Once both physical action tokens are used, mages can't take any more physical actions this round. The first physical action is Explore. With an Explore action, a mage moves up to their total speed value and activates 1 room. First, flip one of the physical action tokens to the used side. Then the mage may activate the room they are in. The mage then moves between rooms up to their speed value, and if they did not activate a room, they may do so after moving. With the physical attack action, the mage punches something, and before or afterwards activates the room. When taking the physical attack action, first flip over one of your physical action tokens. Then, the mage may activate the room they are in. The mage then deals damage to an opposing model in their room equal to their strength. If they did not activate the room, they may do so after dealing damage. The third physical action is Command. With this physical action, a mage activates one of their evocations. First, flip over the physical action token. One of your evocations can then move and make a physical attack. And those are the 3 physical actions that you can take. Now we're going to talk about the 2 other actions that you can take, and we're going to talk about momentum first. In order to use momentum, you take one of the spells that you've not yet activated. This means it's face down on your board and doesn't have any tokens on it. Then you discard it face up to your memories, which is the discard pile on the right of your board. This allows you to move your mage 1 room. You don't get to activate that room. This is not an ideal move because really we want to be casting the spells that we've prepared on our mage sheet. However, you might have to do this, or it might help you if you really need it. The final action, and probably the most important, is cast a spell. Now we're going to look at spells in more detail, but there are a few things that you need to understand first, which are very important. When you cast a spell, you either reveal it, flipping it face up from the bottom, or you might activate it by placing a token on it. Both of these things are known as casting a spell and are an action. The bottom row of spells must be cast in order, left to right. You also cannot cast 2 of these spells as both of your actions in the same turn. The spell at the top is called your quick spell. You can cast this as an action on your turn, and you may do so before or after casting a spell from the bottom row of your mage sheet. This is the only way to cast 2 spells in a turn. At the end of the actions phase, you might have a mage sheet that looks something like this. So those are all the actions available to you in the action phase. Before we move on, remember that every mage starts in their cell. This means that the first action you'll have to make in every game will either be the explore action or the momentum action. And now, let's learn how to read the spell cards. So in this section, we're going to learn how to cast spells in Black Rose Wars. This means how to read the spell cards. There are many different schools of magic in Black Rose Wars, and each school of magic comes with special rules that affect its spell cards. What I'm going to teach you in this section is the rules that are common to all of the spell cards you'll find in each of these schools. So make sure you check the reference cards for any special rules that you might need to know. Most spell cards have 2 different effects on them, one on the top and one on the bottom. However, some do not. You can plan either effect in the preparations phase, but when you trigger the spell in the action phase, you must use the effect that's revealed. Each spell effect has 3 symbols along the top. These 3 symbols indicate type, element, and range. There's also text in the middle describing the spell's effect. Some spells also have an instability effect in the middle, and some don't. If you reveal a spell with an instability symbol, it means that instability is created in the room where the caster is located. Spells come in 4 different types. The lightning bolt is combat, the glass ball is contingency, the bear trap is traps, and the shield is protection. You'll notice that, unlike combat and contingency cards, traps and protection have extra text along the top. We'll consider that in a moment. Let's talk about combat and contingency cards first. Combat spells typically deal damage to your enemies, while contingency spells summon evocations, give you power points, and help you move around the board and all manner of other useful things. All spells also have an element type. These elements don't have a purpose in the game unless specifically referenced by something. For example, spells from the School of Alchemy are stronger when played while other elemental symbols are shown on face-up spells on your board. For example, marbling is enhanced when there are 2 fire symbols visible. And we've got one here on Valor Totem, and one here on Liquid Fire. This is just one example of how elemental symbols might be used. There are 8 different elemental symbols in the game: water, air, earth, and fire, profane, sacred, any, which is a wild, and stars. The final symbol is range, and there are 6 different types of range in the game. The first type of range is personal. This means it affects the mage who casts the spell. The second type is model. This means that the spell can only affect an opposing mage or opposing evocation. The third type is mage. This means the spell can only affect an opposing mage. The fourth type is evocation. This type can only affect an opposing evocation. The fifth type is area. This means the spell affects a room in the lodge, and, if applicable, all the models in that room. This spell targets a room, not any models, even though the model might be affected by the spell. The spell only affects opposing mages and evocations. In this case, it would inflict 2 damage to each opposing mage and opposing evocation in the room. You also assign an umbra to all mages in the target room. The final type of range is special. The range of this spell is context specific. For example, marbling simply inflicts 1 damage to all other mages, except those in their cells. Whenever you see a number in the range icon, this is the maximum number of rooms away that you can cast the spell. A 0 means it must target the appropriate target in the room where the mage is located. In order to cast a spell, you must also have line of sight. The spell Throne of Thorns has a range to any model at a distance of 2. This means that the spell could target Ariana here because she is 1-2 rooms away. However, line of sight, which applies to all spells with a numerical range and a target, must be drawn straight through rooms along the long edges. This means that Ariana could not be targeted if she was here in the throne room because we cannot draw a line of sight. Some spells have an asterisk in place of a number. This transcends the rules for distance and line of sight. It means it can affect the target of the spell at any range and without line of sight. In this case, Barandoria could target his evocation in the room with Ariana because the spell targets evocations and does not have a range or require line of sight. Just remember that no matter what the card says, you can never target a mage in their cell. Traps and protection spells work differently to combat and contingency spells in 2 ways. They have this little extra bit of text here that describes a special trigger condition, and they are not revealed when they are cast. Instead, they are activated. When you cast a trap or a protection spell, you simply announce that it is being cast and place the appropriate token on it to show that it has been activated. From now on, any time in the action phase or the evocation phase, when the trigger condition of the spell is met, you may choose to carry out the spell's effect. Announce that the spell has been triggered and then reveal it. Resolve the text on the spell before continuing the game. If a number of a mage's spells have been triggered at the same time, that mage may choose to enact any number of them in any order. If 2 different mages have had their traps activated at the same time, resolve these in player order. Ariana announces that she moves into the observatory with an explore action. She is intending to move on to the abyss. However, Barandoria stops her and reveals his trap card the mental chasm, when a mage enters a blue or yellow room. Barandoria could have chosen to wait and see if Ariana would enter the abyss in order to trigger his trap, but he decided to trigger it when she entered the observatory because she may have moved on to the forge instead. He reveals the trap card, and because it has been triggered, he may now resolve the text on the trap card. Before we move on, I would like to talk about the common keyword convert. This keyword usually refers to damage or instability. When you see it, it means remove a number of cubes that don't belong to you in any combination and replace them with your own. For example, Ariana decides to cast a spell, Albify, on Barandoria. This has convert 4 wounds on it and targets a mage up to 1 space away. She has line of sight, so she can hit him. Convert 4 wounds means that she's going to take 4 damage cubes assigned to Barandoria and change them for her own. She removes 2 cubes belonging to the blue player and 2 cubes belonging to the Black Rose entity and converts them into her own damage. This doesn't deal any additional damage to Barandoria, but it does mean that Ariana has secured many more points when he is eventually defeated. The Black Rose's cubes are returned to the Black Rose, and the blue player's cubes are returned to the blue player. This is the exact same process if you are converting instability to your own. Typically, when a spell is revealed and resolved, it has no further effect this round, but some spells have ongoing effects. A spell has an ongoing effect when you see this star symbol here. When you reveal a spell with an ongoing effect, find the persistence token that matches the spell's slot. Each player has 4 persistence tokens, 1 for each of the 4 spell slots on their board. In this case, Barandoria has cast a quick spell with an ongoing effect. So we'll take the quick spell token and we'll assign it where appropriate. In this case, it's actually assigned to himself. So we'll simply take this token and put it on Barandoria's Mage sheet, and put it here on Barandoria's Mage sheet to remind him that there is an ongoing effect in play. Now that should give you most of what you need to know on how to cast spells. Anything else is probably specific to the spell or to the school of magic, so make sure you read the spell effects carefully and you also read the reference card for the school of magic. And now let's move on to phase 5, the evocation phase. So we already covered most of how evocations are summoned and controlled and activated by players in the game concepts evocation section of this video. In phase 5 of a game round, the evocations phase, all of the evocations on the board will activate once. This starts with any evocations under the Black Rose entity's control, and then we move on to evocations under Mage control, starting with the Mage that has the crown, and going in clockwise order. In this core set, it's most notable that Umbra evocations are actually controlled by the Black Rose. For more information on that, check the Nightmare Spell School reference card. However, in this case, this Umbra will activate under Black Rose control and deal 1 damage to Barandoria. And then because Barandoria has the crown, Barandoria's evocations will activate first, and the player may activate them in any order. In this case, Barandoria may choose to activate the Colossus first to hit Ariana, or they may choose to activate one of the cadavers, perhaps to move in and hit Ariana, or even to move over here and attack the Umbra and try to kill it. Once every player has activated all of their evocations, it's time for the cleanup phase. The cleanup phase is phase 6 of the round and the final phase. There are 5 steps to check in this phase. Step 1, has anyone won the game? You'll know if anyone's won because they'll possess this token here. Then the game is immediately over, and you should proceed to final scoring. In this case, no one's reached it, so the game will continue. Step 2 is clean up your Mage sheet. There are 4 steps to cleaning up your Mage sheet. Step 1, remove any revealed spells from your Mage sheet and place these into your memories. Unless they're forgotten spells. If they're a forgotten spell, remove them from the game. Step 2. Any activated traps or protection spells that have not been revealed, so they were activated but not revealed, are returned to your hand so that you can use them again at a later date. Collect any of your persistent tokens that have been played and return them to your player pool. Finally, reset your physical action tokens. Step 3 of the cleanup phase is to check for any rooms that have full instability. Any rooms with filled instability are then scored and rebuilt as we discussed in the game concept section, Instability and Rebuilding the Lodge. So check out that section if you want to know how those are done. Step 4 of the cleanup phase is to check victory again. This is because rebuilding the lodge and scoring those rooms might have tipped someone over the PowerPoint threshold and the game might have ended. This means that if you reach 30 points in the action phase or in the evocation phase, this means that some rooms which have reached maximum instability may not actually get scored in the cleanup phase because there's 2 victory checks. That's important to remember. But if no one's won on the second victory check, then it's time to return to the Black Rose phase and begin a new round. And so that brings us to the end of a round in Black Rose Wars, and to the end of this rules video for Black Rose Wars Rebirth. I hope that you found this informative and useful, and if you've got your own copy of the game, I really hope this helps you get it to the table, and helps you to start having fun as soon as possible. So if you have found the video useful, please consider subscribing to the channel, or if you'd like to extend your support further, please consider checking out the Patreon initiative on patreon.com. I'd like to round off the video by thanking Ludus Magnus Studios once again for sponsoring the video. Without them, this wouldn't have been possible. And of course, without the patrons of the show, we wouldn't be able to keep going. So, with that in mind, let's roll the credits. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you in another video very soon. Bye for now.